Good morning, everyone. I have to start by saying I'm really honored to be invited back. It seems like you really love me, so I'm really happy to be here again. Okay, so I was supposed to do the afternoon session, but let's see how much we get done today, because there is a bit of practical stuff we could do in the afternoon, and we can mull over it between now and the next session. I've been asked to do the session on traditional media, online media, social media, and let's just set the tone in terms of our mindset, right? So you need to put yourself in the place now in listening to this presentation that you either sitting here as the executive director of a non-profit, you're a community worker running for local government elections, or you're an activist running a campaign about an issue that you care deeply about, or you're the Director General of a government department, or heading up a bureaucracy somewhere. So, you know, this sort of presentation will be relevant for any of that in terms of post-ASRI future leaders and where you head to in your social entrepreneurship careers next year. So the first question I pose is, you know, why have a media strategy? And the answer I have to that is, you know, at the end of the day, the mass media, being the fourth estate, is your easiest and quickest route to public opinion. If you can convince them that what you're speaking about or what you're advocating about is critically important to society at large. And I have a few links there which I'm going to open up to show you just the extent. Okay, so let's just look at some audience numbers, right? It's a little small. I guess I could make it bigger. Yeah. Okay, so let's look at some audience numbers here, right? When we're talking about the mass media. Top shows by channel, Uzalo, 6.5 million viewers. This was for the week of 21st to 27th December 2015. As you can see up there, there's a website, tvsa.co.za. These are what our fellow South Africans are doing with their free time. SABC 1, Uzalo Generations, Kiam Sam, 6.5 million, 5 million, 3.5 million viewers. Muvango, 4.5 million, The Bold and the Beautiful, 814,000 viewers. Wipeout, I don't know, anyone here, 7 the others, 881,000. The only current affairs in there you're looking at is Koza News, 2.4 million. Seems like Koza speakers worry about current affairs. Entertainment, again, E-News, Scandal, Rhythm City, Gulliver's Travels. 2.786 million. That's not exactly the response I was looking for. You know, you guys are supposed to be like, why are there so many soapies up there? Okay. Top shows by genre. Forced Love, 2.8 million. Ikasi, Our Stories, 1.5 million. Top reality shows. Rian, 2.1 million. Let's keep going. Top comedies, My Perfect Family, SABC 1, 2.4 million viewers. Okay, so this is the important stuff, right? Top news bulletins. Again, Xhosa News, 2.4 million, Zulu News, 2.1 million, Indebele, Siswati News, 1 million, Siswati, Tswana, Tsapedi News, 626,000, Afrikaans News, 600,000. I have no idea why English news doesn't feature there. Let's skip the soap operas, but like just as a matter of interest, right? Just look at the number of news viewers versus soap viewers. Okay, top talk shows. Zaziwa, 2 million. Shift, The Repeat, 570,000. That's what the R there is for.
But the repeat on Saturday.
Steve Harvey, I have no idea who started Steve Harvey.
You don't know Steve Harvey? The guy who gave them
American.
Miss Bullshit.
Yes, it
Hey?
Miss World.
That's why.
Do you watch Miss World?
The really good big
Miss World.
Yeah. They got me.
He announced the wrong winner.
Okay. Alright. Magazine shows, game shows, top documentaries. I shouldn't be alive 1.4 million. Sisters with Soul, 841,000. Okay, so you get the picture, right?
Yeah.
Of the number of people you can reach if you manipulate the mass media to your own cause. Okay, let's try to go back here. So the next numbers I want to show is radio numbers. It loads. Okay, loads.
And of course,
That's the biggest thing.
it's constant.
Okay. Let's see a bit small. Let's see if we can make it a bit bigger. I'll just read out some of it, right? So what we're looking at here is August 14, 2014. There's 2015 numbers here as well. But I can't put it on screen. Okay, so I'm just going to give you guys can go look at this. It's at the SAARF.co.za website. What they do is they do audience surveys for a range of community and commercial radio stations, right? So I'm just trying to give you an idea of the kinds of numbers that community radio has in South Africa. You can go look at the commercial radio because they did numbers. Yes?
I just wanted to know what the television shows, which year is that?
The one I showed was December last year.
Oh, okay.
The numbers I showed was December last year.
Do
Yes?
they have some sort of formula to care? I mean, they can't count per TV because the TV is watched by 10 people sometimes. So you're
So, like, they have different survey methodologies to test what the audience numbers are. Some of it they might do off satellite dishes and then they extrapolate, but they also would do like phone surveys, those sort of things to get a sense. So they'll have a sample. Based on the sample, they'll extrapolate out what the broader audience numbers are. So, just out of convenience, I'm going to do this one for 2014, but you can see the 2015 numbers are down there, right? So Western Cape, this was past 7 days, which was March to June 14, in thousands and percentage of the audience numbers. You can see 89,000 BOC radio, 137,000 CCFM. Now remember, these are community stations, right? So effectively they're broadcasting on FM to within 30 kilometers of their transmitter, but some of them are less. Like Voice of Wits used to have a transmitter that was only 5 kilometers. Basically covering the Wits University sort of area. Now they've got a full Johannesburg signal, but previously it was only campus-wide. So, it's just to give you an idea of, number one, a resource you can go to find numbers. If you have an issue, if you're advocating for something in a specific community somewhere in South Africa, you can go to these and say, okay, in this area, which are the community media organizations, who has the best audiences, who's the people that we need to speak to about relationship building, those sort of things. So if you're sitting somewhere in the Western Cape, you have an issue you want to advocate for, your best bets are going to be, depending on who the audience is, Muslim audience, Radio 786, Voice of the Cape together, 257,000 people, right? Eden FM, 167,000, CCFM, 137. Tygerberg. So you in Tygerberg, you're doing a campaign. Tygerberg FM, 320,000 people. Right? Northern Cape, if you are in an unfortunate situation that you're living in the desert, and advocating, or in the fortunate situation, you know, maybe in the Karoo advocating against fracking. So the biggest one there is 109,000 at Radio Kiamaneng Stereo. Let's see what else. Eastern Cape, what's the big one there? Alfred and Zoe Community Radio, 277,000. Okay. 268,000 for Nkonjane. What else do we have? Unita. Is that a university radio station? 287,000. University of Transkei. What's Unita? Eh? So they probably changed names since 2014. But that's a big number, right? 287,000 for a what's it called? For a university radio station is pretty decent. Free Start, Free State, 155, Moteo FM. So can you see that the numbers on the community radio station, typically the vernacular stations have huge audiences?
Yes.
Right? Is that the, I hope that's the point you're seeing. KZN, what's the big one? 180 for William Zanzi. Radio Quasi 158. Total audience is 1 million for the whole of KZN, right?
Wow, they listen to the radio. Oh, there's not much else to do.
Okay, Mpumalanga, let's get to Gauteng. Okay, awesome. Alright, that's enough. You guys get the picture, right?
Halabo.
Okay. Okay, so the point I'm making there is that in South Africa, the mass media audience is still very much a TV and radio audience, right? As opposed to international markets where internet penetration is cheaper and much more, you're seeing a growth in social media usage, Apple TV, Netflix, live streaming, all those sort of things, right? So you were asking the question, how can I not watch TV? I don't watch TV, I have no DSTV at home. My media is consumed purely on the internet, right? I'll like be watching things on YouTube or AJ Plus. So majority of my news and my consumption of media is done online rather than through broadcast television. But remember that in South Africa, majority of South Africans only have access to 4 TV channels. SABC 1, 2, 3, ETV, and if there is a community TV station in the area, like in Joburg, Soweto TV, in Pretoria, Shwane TV, in Cape Town, CTV, and so on, you'd have 5-channel option and you'll be switching between them. DSTV penetration is probably about a couple of million at best, right? In South Africa, there is a growing social media usage, so you know, Cell C 5 Rand data for WhatsApp means that there's uptake for that. Which provider offers free Facebook? Is there any? Cell C also. So because of those sort of offerings, your Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp usage would probably increase over time, and as the costs of data come down in the next year or two, you'd see that happening. And that's where like Twitter social media couch advocacy sort of comes into its own. Very often activists form a adversarial relationship with the media and blame the media for everything that goes wrong. The one point I need to make to you is that public opinion is your best friend, which means that the media is also your best friend. They're the gatekeepers to broader public opinion, and good relationships with the media means that your issue would likely get coverage if you're able to convince them. And much easier on a community level than a national media level, because community media is more sort of, let's call it more grassroots, volunteerism, real down-to-earth issues rather than national media that only look at national issues. So effectively there's 2 sides of the mass media coin. The one is advocacy, using the mass media to educate people about your issue, your campaign, your activities in your organization and so on. And that approach is where you try to use the mass media to shift public opinion and pressurize decision makers to take decisions in favor of your issue, whether it's environment or education or healthcare, whatever, right? And that publicity would help you attract funders, attract volunteers, attract supporters to your cause, and positive media coverage, because people attach value to the mass media. So, if you find SABC News credible, then things that are shown on SABC News you will assume are credible issues that you should be supporting. So let's ask a question at this point. Can you think of a recent issue that pretty well, or the media sort of adopted a very sort of positive stance towards? You can't remember any?
The VC testing for bursaries?
The VC? The bursary campaign adverts?
No, the maiden bursaries.
Oh,
No,
No, I'm talking about how the media
coverage.
how the media covered it. Like they didn't say that this should be going on, but most of what we saw, the content that we saw, was of dissent.
Right.
So you got the impression that the media stance was against it, because that's the majority of the stuff that we saw.
Okay. So other things you can think of. Now, I'm trying to say where the media was giving the impression positively that this was a good thing in the last, let's say, 6 months. And then they turned against it. Exactly. So leading up to FISMA's fall, it was all this like grand June 16th generation coming back, very sort of romanticized. Remember in the lead up to the march to the Union buildings?
Yes.
And once TUT pitched up, the media turned against the entire campaign, pretty much, and to a large extent killed public opinion. And that's like a real-time case study where you saw the media play a huge role in terms of shifting public opinion in support of it, and within an event, shifting public opinion against it, right? And that's a perfect example, media-wise, of the ups and downs of the media in terms of being the darlings of the media and then being the villains of the media. Right? Public relations. So again, you can use the mass media for your public relations and marketing purposes, right? Which in government terms is called spin doctrine. Develop an awareness and identity about your campaign, your organization, build your organization's campaign credibility, and those sort of things, right? Any questions at this point? Okay, your best resources. Number one, don't reinvent the wheel. If there's something you don't know, there's 3 places you can always go to find stuff. Google, YouTube, and Wikipedia, right? So if you go to Google and you put down how to run a social media campaign, you'll find a whole bunch of suggestions on how to do it. You go to Google and you ask, how do you draft press statements? How do you draft press releases? If it's a specific campaign that you're running, environment, for example, you can look at other environmental campaigns that other organizations have run. So there's a huge amount of information out there. You don't need to rethink it yourself. You just need to go curate what's out there, and you'll be able to find a whole lot of things. YouTube has a huge amount of resources in terms of tutorials on doing things, right? You can learn how to put up a website on YouTube. You can learn how to Photoshop pictures on YouTube. You can, like the whole sort of toolbox of mass media advocacy that you need if you sort of want a one-man campaign and starting out, or one-lady campaign and starting out. You can go to any of those resources and they'll give you pretty good information about, yes?
But I mean, one of the arguments that were given against Wikipedia, and at least this was a couple of years when I was still at varsity, was the idea that it was not peer reviewed.
Right.
And by virtue of it being open, and I mean the openness I think is a bit more than YouTube and Google. People could then post things that are not necessarily factual.
Remember, I'm talking about skills here, not the actual content, right? So if you're looking for skills on editing pictures, putting out press statements, running a campaign, advocating for an issue, specifically in terms of mass media, those resources are there to give you actual examples of how it's been done by others, as well as suggestions and recommendations. And I have one website example here that we're going to use to go through in terms of press alerts and press statements. So that's what I'm saying. Use it for tutorials and use it to build up your own skills when you have specific things that you need to do. Okay, so South Africa specific, this is something you probably didn't come across, which is the Government Communications and Information Service. There's numerous databases at the GCIS, and I'm going to click on that to take us to the page so I can just show you what's there. So in the ASRI context, for example, you know we send out the ASRI short papers every week, right? On every Wednesday, which is what I was supposed to be doing this Wednesday morning, sending out this week's paper. The question becomes, okay, so who do you send it to, right? You have a database. If people know about you, they'll sign up for your mailing list. You know, some media organizations through our own press releases and so on have asked to republish. So a paper from 2 weeks ago will get republished in Fun Week this week, purely from sending out a press statement. But there's a lot of groundwork that you have to do as an individual to make sure that you get your message out there, because you're really competing with a whole bunch of other non-profit organizations or a whole lot of other issues to get the attention of the mass media to cover your own specific issue. Right? So how best do you do that is you need to create your own lists, your own databases, all those sort of things. And the GCIS, with our tax money, does a good job for you. Right? So if you look at what they have here, they have a database of all national government structures, all provincial and local government structures. So if you're trying to campaign for something specific to a specific government department, you'll be able to pick up a whole lot of context there. State-owned enterprises, international representation in South Africa, those are primarily think tanks and, those are primarily embassies and think tanks. Media context is what I'll click on to show you, and then miscellaneous other organizations, so foundations, tourism authorities, and so on. Just by the way, I had Selma last week going through the entire national government structure list and pulling out every single email for our own database. Right? So as time goes by, every week, our mailing list is growing to include all of the MPs, all the MPLs, every single government bureaucrat. It will take us a couple of weeks, but we'll get to the point where we have every single person in South African government on our database at some point to receive an ASRI short paper weekly. That's the idea, right? And that's what campaigning and advocacy and so on is about. You do it yourself, you put in the hard work and the grind, and then when you click a button, it goes to everyone. So let's do this one first. You have parliamentary information, judicial institutions, independent constitutional bodies, the presidency, all of the government departments and ministries, and so on. So if we want to campaign against nuclear energy, you can go to all of these contact details. You can probably also go to, where was it? Yeah. You can probably also go to the National Assembly, which has the speakers, deputy speakers, executive director of parliament, like every single person's emails on there. You can probably also find here somewhere so these are all the parliamentary people. I was actually looking for the specific committees, but you get the point, right? So there's all of this information that's already there. If you want the list of all the MPs in Parliament, you can go to the Parliament website, they have the list of everyone, right? You want to see who the chairman of or the chairwoman of a specific parliamentary committee is, or who the members of their committee is, you can find that to make contact, to set up a meeting, to discuss something you're not happy about, etc., etc. And to send out your press releases too. Which other one did I want to show you? The media list, right? So let's look at the media list that they have. And one of the first things we did at ASRI for our media list is we curated all of these contacts into an email list. So our ASRI stuff goes to all of these guys. So remember I mentioned the audience numbers. This is where you find their contact details. So this is all South African national and commercial TV stations. You can see they're all there. Sorry, my fingers are... Okay, so we saw the numbers for Cajee in KZN, right? You want to contact with Cajee to run a campaign with them. There's their contact details for the program manager and the marketing manager. Ready for you to go. Their phone numbers are there. Everything's there, right? Including the station manager. At your fingertips, on a desktop. Newspapers and magazines, community radio stations, regional radio stations, everything's there, right? Let's go back to the presentation. Okay, so that GCIS contact directory is a critical resource. They keep it up to date. If contact details change, station managers change, and so on, you just go back to it and you find it. Now something? No? Okay. So, I've shown you some of them already, but the traditional media in summary basically covers newspapers, national, international, regional, and community, magazines, Fun Week, Economist, Time Magazine, GQ, and all the others on the GCIS list. Television, you've got SABC, ETV. Locally, you've got your community TV stations, and then you have the international ones, Al Jazeera, CNN, BBC, Sky, etc. So I'm like pretty much focusing on media here, but you could look at entertainment channels and all those things as well. And then radio, SABC, Power FM, 702, Cape Talk, it's all on the GCIS list, depending on where you're at and who you're trying to target. It's all available to you, right? So the GCIS list helps you to actually see what's there rather than you trying to figure it out, and you can tick out of them which ones you want to interact with for your specific issue or campaign and so on. So let's talk about some strategies with traditional media. Traditional media, it's actually much simpler than you think it would be. The first point I'd like to make is that there's no replacement for personal relationships. So don't expect emails to help you build a relationship with the station manager of a local news, or the editor of a local newspaper, or the station manager of a community radio station, and so on. You should put time and effort into schmoozing and relationship building with the community newspaper editor, or the community radio station's station manager, or the community TV station manager. Obviously, in terms of reaching the editors of the national newspapers and so on, there has to be something compelling for them to say that they're going to meet you, which means your organization is national, or your issue is like really critical, or you've like inspired the support of like a large number of people and so on. But at the local level, your community organizations and community newspapers are very, very willing to meet with activists and so on, for the simple reason that they themselves have deadlines, and they need to produce content for their papers for it to go out, or their radio stations on a 24-hour basis, or their TV stations on a 24-hour basis. So the mission of every single station manager or editor is to find as good content as possible, as regularly as possible. And if you're seen as a resource who's going to give them a good piece every month or every couple of weeks, or if you're seen as a good guest on their radio station to speak about issues that are important to their listeners, they're going to call you, and they're going to call you regularly, right? As an example from my TV experience, we had a list of guests that would be called in for specific issues on TV as guest interview. The interview producers would have lists that they call to say, we're speaking about this today, or this is the news report, can you give us a comment? If you get onto those sort of lists at radio stations or TV stations, they'll keep calling you back. They'll say, this is so-and-so from this organization. They do social work, or they do education policy work and so on. And you'll get called back regularly. And as a consequence, your organization will get exposure, but you as a person would also get exposure to others who support that that campaign or that issue. The same with the community newspapers. If you're providing them with an article every time they're publishing, and it's good and it's well written and the editor doesn't have to spend a lot of time fixing it, in all likelihood he'll probably run it. If those, it's not overcovered and so on. So there's two main strategies or tools that you use for traditional media. The one is the press alert, which is usually for events, and the second one is the press release, which is typically for reprinting. So if you've had an event, you'd send out a press release, or you're doing an event. The example I use in the next page is the Future Leaders graduation. So you're doing an event, graduation of ASRI Future Leaders. Perhaps it has like a prominent personality from South Africa who's going to be giving the keynote address or something like that. You'll send out a press release to say ASRI Future Leaders program, graduation, this is the guest speaker, these are the pictures and so on. Let me just open that up and then we can have a look at it. Okay. So like I said, the internet's your best friend. You can find a whole wealth of resources. So this is one that I chose. Let's look at the media alert template first, because that's what I was mentioning to you. So the media alert, you informing the media about the event that you're running. What you're going to do is write a headline. What is it about? When is it? You'll describe what's happening. You'll describe who's holding the event. And those would be in separate lines. So whoever's looking at it easily can see each of these specific lines in a very quick and easy 2-minute, well, not even 2 minutes, 30-second scan. Who, why, who should attend, when is it happening, where is it happening, who's the media contact, and so on, right? And then the next one I want to show you is how to write the perfect press release in 1 hour or less. You guys can go to this and read it over and over, but I'm going to give you an activity to actually do one of these. So for the press releases, you choosing the topic of the press release, you're writing the headline, you're writing the body of the press release. Very often community media organizations, if you write it properly, they'll just cut and paste it out and put it into the paper itself, right? With national media, they'd take parts of it like quotes and so on, and they'll rework or they'll phone you for additional comments and so on. But if it's written in the form of an article, very often community media would actually carry it or adapt it a little bit, but they'll run it. Write the body of the press release and then verify that the rules were followed. It has to be written in the third person. Focus on an announcement rather than selling something. The media is not going to try to sell a product for you, right, for free. They'll cover issues that are of public interest. Include a contact name, email address, and phone number at the bottom, so they know who to contact for more interviews, for comments, and so on. Make it unique. The media usually looks for a hook on which to attach something or attach a story. So try to find a relevant hook to that media outlet. So if that media outlet has a specific audience or specific community, try to make it as relevant as possible to that outlet's audience. And the guideline is between 200 and 500 words. If it's much longer, they won't carry it. Most columns and so on in newspapers would be between 200 and 500 words. If it's a half page, it's about 700 words worth, like a nice sized picture. Try to provide some of those things for the outlet as well. Try to provide pictures, try to provide sound bites for radio stations if possible. You can do all of that, right? So let me open up some examples so we can go through it. First one. Okay, so this is the example of a press release, right? There's the headline: writer researcher agrees to present his sustainable future work at China's 2013 Low Carbon Earth Summit. So it's written a headline, who's doing it, the press release, the contact details, the headline again, and then you can see that it's written in the form of an article that any media outlet can take. Right? So I'm going to read it out loud for those who can't see it at the back. August 29, 2013. It's written as MMD Newswire, but it could be your organization's name or your own name. An expert on developing cost-effective and life support systems, effective, low and carbon-free economy, John Bell will show international summit attendees how efficient energy use and renewable energy development are foundational to long-term success. And then it goes on, describes cost of products and services, the Low Carbon Earth Summit, how many people are attending, where it's happening, how many topics are being covered, what sort of topics are there. And then this guy, Jim, is the guy who wants the publicity and wants the interviews. So there at the bottom he's saying he's written so many books and he's the expert in this sort of area and these are the things that he's done. He's presenting based on a paper that he's done. The paper's free to send out to others and print out at wherever. Click on the button on his homepage to see it, right? So this guy, John Bell, is trying to get publicity for his presentation that he's doing at this Earth Summit. He's given them a bit of background to the issues at hand, but at the end he ends to say, if you want to interview someone about this, call me. And what a radio station might do is run it as a news headline to say this is happening, and we have John Bell who's presenting on the line. The same with a TV station, right? This is what's happening, and we have one of the presenters with us, almost in an exclusive way. And all of this is, again, you'll be able to find these links out of my presentation anyways, to go there and to look at other examples. So here we have what I showed you, which is the press alert example, right? So the press alert example, remember we said line by line you're showing the media what's going to be happening there. So here, celebration of International Women's Day, what's happening, the media can have speakers, music, dancing, because they want to know very quickly what it is that they're going to get from going there. So a TV station would want compelling pictures, they want to see things that they can put together into a news package. With radio, it's about sound. They want to have good sound clips, good sort of clean, interesting sound for their listeners. So if you describe to them what they're going to see there, they might say, well, there'll be nice pictures here, plus there's going to be very strong opinions or very strong speakers and so on, and we can put a really interesting package, right? If it's somebody against the white wall speaking, very likely, unless you're really important, they're not going to pitch up. Right? So here it says, what would the media get there? Music, dancing, fashion show, parade, lunch, and career fair. The media love free lunch, by the way. International Women's Day Organizing Committee, elementary school, after-school program, a school district, American Association of University Women. So now your editors or the editors looking at it and saying, okay, it's not just them, it's like a wide array of organizations. Much more compelling to go to rather than a startup organization. So there's other partners, it's much bigger. Event highlight, fashion show parade, which will include the audience and all participants. The editor will say, okay, that's interesting, we can get some good pictures. Topics covered, stories about the perseverance required for women and girls to achieve their goals and related information, culture and other important life and skills. There's your hook. Remember I said everything needs a hook that gets attached to it. For this one, the hook is the stories about the perseverance required for women and girls to achieve their goals. So as a media editor, you'll say, okay, So the story is going to be on the perseverance of women and girls to achieve their goals. And there's this event with all of the other stuff. So in all likelihood, they'll start off and say, there was the celebration of International Women's Day, and the key issue was showcasing the perseverance of women and girls. And then they do a few interviews with some of those stories, which gives it a very nice first-person narrative sort of feel. And then they have some speakers, right? So important speakers from that community. So in the context of a community TV station, you'll say, well, the warden of the women's facility is going to be there. The first Latina mayor in California is going to be there. Those are great sound bites. It's very nice. Our audience needs to know about it. I'm sorry I'm using American examples, but in terms of South African resources like this, it's very scarce. What music is there? Dancing, free lunch. Can you see how free is in bold? Why is it happening? Empower women and girls by showing them a wide range of careers accessible, etc., etc. Who should attend the event? Everyone there. What's the date and time? So this is an easy way for the media to say, this is an event happening, this is what's happening, this is what we can see. They don't need to read paragraphs of text, they just can see everything that is done. Predominantly for announcing events, and could be anything. Could be a conference, could be a march, could be any of those things. And the other one is where you specifically want it carried in a way. So the article format can be carried online, or can be carried in a newspaper, or can even be the write-up for an intro into a radio station. So what do you guys prefer? Do you want me to finish up the social media strategy and then we do the practical stuff in the afternoon? Or do you want to do the practical now and then we do social media in the afternoon? Or should I just choose? Yeah.
Yes, I'm trying to understand the difference between the
press alert and the press release.
Is it more platforms, or is the content the same? Is it just a platform?
So the one is the format's very different. Right? So the format is one-liners for the press alert, and the press release is a well-written 200 to 500 word piece about what's happening. Right? The other difference is that press alerts and media advisories are more related to upcoming events. So you'll send a press release to say this event is happening. Or if there's something happening right now, like we all get together and decide to go start a protest in Rosebank, we can send out a press release to say happening now, this is happening, we're going to burn a flag or something, and the media will
So that's a press alert? Or
yeah, so the press alert of the media advisory.
I think you said press release.
Yeah, sorry. And then the press release is the written out, multiple word sort of thing, right? And they're used for different purposes. You'll send out a press release pre-event or post-event, but it's well written. So post-event, you'll say, we as ASRI ran a Future Leaders graduation, and this is what happened, and these are the people who were there. So any community media organizations can cut and paste it in and say this is what happened, and they'll usually take credit that their reporter did it, And the press alert would generally be in advance and not after. So your press alert is saying this will be happening, right? If it's after the fact, you can't say this will be happening, right? Okay, so in terms of community media, the strategies you can use is article placement. So with the launch of ASRI Future Leaders, we wrote a piece, we took the picture, Maneo wrote it, we sent it to a few media houses, and they're going to carry it as is. Radio interviews, you're schmoozing the editor of a radio station, and they call you in for an interview. Television shows the same. Community media always want volunteers. So if you volunteer at a community radio station or community TV station, you'll typically be able to build up the relationship, but you'll also be able to speak about your issue. Your issue is education. You can tell them, well, can I do an education show? They might try you out. They'll do a voice test or screen test or something like that. And you then, you guys don't use the fence. You figure they don't work or something? I can see people getting sleepy. Okay, question?
Yes. On media, radio or TV.
Yeah.
When would they want you to pay for the airtime? Because I know that at times, if you're heading a campaign, at times they would want you to pay for that space. Airtime.
So, it depends on the radio stations themselves, right? If for them the issue is very compelling and it's in the public interest, very often you'll get interviewed about it as an event. You'll get it into community announcements or into the news bulletins and those sort of things, right? Usually when it's becoming too much, they'll say, well, now it's becoming advertorials rather than actual news content. And that's the balance you need to find. That at the beginning with events and so on, very often media organizations and community organizations would, community newspapers would carry a headline about your story, call you in to do an interview. But you need to be creative about it. So as an example, when we were doing the ASRI conference last year, what we did was we brought together a few community radio stations to syndicate it across all of them at the same time. And we said what we'll provide to them are guests from the conference exclusively to them, but they need to give a 1 hour time slot for that. Right? So they were getting the groundwork all done in terms of prominent guests about specific issues, and they didn't charge anything for that. They were more than willing to do it because they were co-opted as partners into the event. Right? But it's on a case-by-case basis depending on the organization. And once you have good community media coverage, you can usually leverage that for national coverage because your campaign will grow, people will start supporting it and get involved and so on, which means you have more credibility, and they almost act as curators of your, let's call it integrity. Right? So the community media will almost be curators of your integrity, which means the national media says, this has a track record, this person has a track record. And I think yesterday Ridwan spoke a lot about your identity, your values. And that's one thing, that if the media senses any sort of lack of credibility in terms of yourself, you won't get any coverage or any exposure at all, purely because of that. And obviously there's double standards as well, but in general that's the principle. In terms of distribution, I've spoken about it a little bit. Usually your traditional media was sent by fax to the newsrooms. Now it's by email largely. So you need to have, in the past you needed to have this list of fax numbers that you'd send things to. I'll tell you a story about university. When I was at university, we didn't have email, right? Just so that you know. Neither did we have cell phones. Right? Our press statements for SRC events used to go out by fax machine. So you had someone standing next to the fax machine, typing in a number at a time, 011. Oh, well, at that time you don't even have to do 011. You have to just put in the number, whatever. SABC newsroom, ETV newsroom, SAPA wires, etc., and we'd sit for a few hours doing that. Nowadays with email, you have something like MailChimp, which we use at ASRI. You create all the email addresses, you load it in, you click send, and it goes to 1,000 people in a single instant. Later on, when you had dial-up modems, you had the software on the computer where you could dial up through your modem into a fax program, and the fax program would send it out. But we started out dialing numbers on a fax machine. I mentioned that already, so it needs to be newsworthy, topical, interesting, needs a hook with a story, needs to be hung on. During my time at Wits SRC, the issue we chose that year was HIV/AIDS, because we were in the midst of the Mbeki AIDS denialism. So for that entire year, we were thinking up an interesting way to bring the issue to the fore through every quarter. So the first quarter, what we did was public HIV/AIDS testing, right? Some people called it a gimmick, we called it a stunt, but at the end of the day, it got national media coverage, and all it took us was calling the blood bank to Wits, calling the media to Wits, and opening up our veins for needles going into our arms. And that gave the pictures to the media for them to say, Wits ASRI doing public HIV testing and encouraging the rest of South Africa to do the same. And that was completely diametrically opposed to government's view, which was HIV does not exist, right? So that was second term, before June. End of June, I mean, like post-June, what we did was we had a university assembly with the university and a march. So it was the first time in like a few decades that students at Wits University ever actually had a university assembly and a university march. And the entire Great Hall lawns were full of Wits students. The only issue on the agenda of the assembly was HIV/AIDS, with speakers talking about HIV/AIDS. And then post the assembly, we all took a march around the university. No, actually around Braamfontein and back into the university. And that gave the media the pictures that they needed for like all the students talking about HIV/AIDS, marching around Braamfontein, the academics, the student leadership from the different faculties, university management, activist organizations, etc. So, you know, if it was a pronouncement, the media wouldn't have really covered it, but because there was a hook, which was a compelling event that they could cover, precedent setting in many ways, they then gave it like prominent media coverage, right? So I guess what we're gonna do after, in the next session, actually let me cover social media strategies and then we'll do the practicals in the afternoon, okay? Let's do it. So online media strategies. The difference between online and social media versus traditional media is traditional media has a curator in between. So your SABC editor is somebody who's in between, your ETV editor, your community newspaper editor is in between. With social and online media, you go in directly to the audience. There's nobody who's there to filter your message to the larger audience. So Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp, all of that could be seen as a distribution platform similar to the transmitter of a radio station. Right? You effectively the media outlet producing the content, or your organization or the person who's responsible for social media. We've had a few failed attempts at ASRI to get you to be our content producers. We'll keep trying. You don't get the joke, but when we do the practicals on social media, you'll see that. Right? So what's very important about this strategy is your website, your social media accounts have to be slick and pretty much up to date, looking good, looking professional. You could be a one-person organization, but if your website looks really good, people assume that you are a mega big organization. Right? The same with your social media accounts. If your social media accounts are inactive, people assume you inactive. If your social media accounts are mega active, people assume that you are a multiple person organization. That's the perception you face, right? Getting started, so the secret to a good social media campaign is content. That you need to be producing regular content and be building up followers to your own account. The question you'll ask is, okay, how do you get followers? How do you move from your 0 follower count on your Twitter account to like 250,000 that Zwelinzima Babi has, for example, right? The one way, obviously, that I've spoken about is regular content, which is in essence microblogging. So if you're at a conference or you're sitting in a session and so on, instead of tweeting one tweet for the whole event, you tweet every second sentence that the person's speaking about. So you're at a conference, say the conference hashtag is like economic development, and somebody's speaking, if you on that hashtag are tweeting every single like key point of the speaker, very often at that conference, other participants of the conference will follow you because they want to see what you're tweeting, and they also would want to keep in touch with you because they feel you like an active person. Question is that?
And also like on Twitter, a nice way of like getting followers quickly in a short space of time would be if you thread your tweets.
Right.
So like if you're tweeting for an organization, you're tweeting on behalf of yourself, like you do a thread. So therefore, unlike tweeting one here and one there and one there, if you do a thread, it makes people easier to follow your conversation, and then more people get to follow you if they follow, perhaps like maybe you're tweeting about, I don't know, like the state of education in the country, and then you like have a whole thread, so people can start from the beginning and then retweet from the beginning up until the end, which then makes your, which then improves the number of activity on that particular thread, which then increases your
Correct. And also, like you'll notice what SABC News does, for example, is they'll tweet 10 tweets as a group. So in your timeline, when you're scrolling, suddenly your screen is just the same, like logo with the messages. Is that what you meant as well, or?
No, like with a thread it's different.
Oh, so like tweet one of two, tweet
no,
one
like
of.
If you do a thread, you'll have your first tweet, right? And then like you tweet and tweet and tweet, but then there's not going to be like one person on your on your timeline. They'll have like maybe the first tweet, and then they have like maybe at the bottom maybe 30 more replies. So you can click there and see like your other thread.
Correct. And Twitter does some of that automatically for you as well. Like if someone replies to your first tweet, it gets added in.
Yeah.
And then if somebody replies to that thread does.
So like this, you reply to yourself.
Yeah. So when you reply to yourself, so then you delete your handle and then you tweet again. Okay. So that forms a thread.
So I guess at this point we should say there's nothing illegal with having multiple Twitter accounts, and you tweeting and all of them talking to yourself. Nobody will judge you. Okay. Which is one of the strategies. So if you have a conversation with yourself in multiple identities, you're doing it for the cause, there's nothing wrong with it. Okay, so hashtags, you guys know about hashtags. Basically, hashtags make a specific topic easily searchable, and it has a history, it never goes unless you delete it. So we have a hashtag for ASRI short papers, all of our short papers from the beginning. On day one, there were like 2 or 3 or 4 tweets, it was said, but now if you go back to it, you can see every single paper we've published, if you're scrolling through, and that hashtag is like, an ASRI short paper hashtag. If people click on it once, they can go through and they might get sucked into the rabbit hole to read others, right? The other way you can get followers is by tweeting directly at other people. There are limits here. You can only follow about, there's a equation that Twitter uses, so you can only follow a percentage multiplier of the number of people that are following you, right? And I don't know exactly what the formula is, but we used this strategy very effectively when we started ASRI's first account. So we started the ASRI account, Walid sat on his phone and he chose specific prominent people's Twitter followers, for example, take Vavi, and he started at the top and he said, at every single person on that follower list sent a specific tweet, right, about the conference. And what you'll find is maybe 2 out of 10 people will follow you back. So you, say if I followed every single one of you here, out of all of you, maybe 3 out of 30 would follow me back. And if I tweet directly at you, maybe 1 out of 10 will follow you back. Usually the ones who follow you back are the ones who don't have a lot of Twitter followers. So you follow them, they follow you back, and you build up. And within a week, we built up 2,000 followers to the ASRI account, okay, through that strategy. And then what you have to do is you have to then the next day delete. The next day you have to delete like 300 or 400 people you followed the day before, because Twitter won't let you go beyond that percentage, and then you refollow another 400. Out of the 400, another 40 will follow you back, and you just keep doing that. And over a period of time, you'll build up your Twitter account followers. Right? So the last bit I'm going to end off with now is just a bit of a description about AJ Plus. AJ Plus, which we spoke about a little bit the last time, was effectively meant to be 6 staff members and a YouTube channel. YouTube was the distribution, and the 6 staff members were meant to be the content producers for that channel, to produce content on a daily basis as their day jobs. Looking at international news, looking at the news that Al Jazeera was producing for AlJazeera.com, and taking those news articles, taking the major headlines out of it and just turning it into pretty videos. Through various discussions and iterations, especially in terms of decision makers liking the idea, they then allocated budget for 30 people and a bigger studio and nicer equipment and so on, which meant eventually at launch, Al Jazeera Plus consisted of 4 organizations, 4 departments. One was called content, the other one was called engagement, the 4th one was called design, and the third one was design, and the 4th one was operation. What the content team did was they looked at news stories and they came up with the editorial content for that in terms of the text and the headlines and those sort of things. The engagement team was basically staff who sat on Twitter and Facebook the whole day to push the content and interact with audiences who were responding to it and to have conversations with them, right? The design team were graphic designers and animators. So the design team will get the content, get the ideas from the editorial team, and they then turn it into pretty videos because they had the animation skills to actually turn it into it. And I'll show you some examples to conclude. A very interesting stat. 25% of Al Jazeera Plus's last 1 billion views. So they've, since launch, Al Jazeera Plus has had in excess of 2 billion views. Right? It's one of the most successful online news agencies at the moment, if I do say so myself, which is the equivalent of 250 million Twitter viewers. And this last billion views took them a couple of months to get to. 250 million of those views were actually on Twitter. So you don't need a satellite dish anymore. You don't need a newspaper printing press anymore. All you need is a Twitter account, and you can get there. So okay, let me do this, right? So I'm going to show you what we're doing in the afternoon. We're going to do 2 things. The one thing we're going to do is we're going to run a social media campaign. And it will take us like the first 10, 15 minutes to do it. We're going to choose an issue. We're going to create a social media account. We're going to choose a hashtag for the advocacy. We're going to agree a content strategy for that, or debate a content strategy. And what we're going to do is then we're going to split up into an engagement team and into a content team. The content team are going to come up with tweets, and the engagement team are going to talk to themselves. We might not be able to do it live on Twitter, but we can basically role play it and check how it goes. I'll try to figure out if we can do it live. But then if we do it live, we'll use people who already have like Twitter accounts. You can go back and, like, I know people don't want to mess up their timelines, and I don't either. So and the other thing we're going to do is, we might not get to this because the social media one is much more interesting. But writing a press release and writing a press alert for the ASRI Future Leaders graduation. So that I might leave you as homework, and then the other stuff. Or we can do it when you're back from holiday.
Yes.
Yeah. Is tomorrow the last day?
Yes.
Today is my last day.
Oh, okay.
I'm on leave from tomorrow for like 2 weeks.
So if you're a small, like, a couple of people doing a campaign, or you're a small NGO, where would you prioritize your attention? Would it be in traditional media outlets and doing the press releases in the press, or would you focus your attention on being a content-producing channel through social media and developing engagement that way?
So, 2 minutes. Okay. In South Africa, I'd go heavily on community media because we're still very much a TV market, so community TV and those sort of things. Remember, online, Twitter and so on is still a very sort of, let's call it niche audience. Wealthy, middle class, smartphone, access to cheap data. So, generally with campaigns and so on, your audience isn't that audience. It's a feel-good audience because you can have some nice conversations. But if you really want to get broad-based support, then your community media at this point in time in South Africa is the way to go. As opposed to Canada, for example, where you could run a social media campaign purely and nobody reads anymore anyways. Right? I know in terms of my specific media habits, I would read the Rosebank Killarney Gazette, which is a community newspaper that's delivered every week to my door, right? I'm not subscribed to the Star or Mail and Guardian or any of that because I just go to their websites and read whatever's on there anyways, right? And if I'm a channel surfer, I would be switching between SABC 1, 2, 3 and ETV. Okay, so let's choose a video. Do you guys want to see pretty American stuff, or let's go here, right?
Oh, let's see the black.
Which one?
We're not violent. We don't intend to be violent. The plan was never to be violent.
How many people do you think it takes to make this? One person. So can you see the format? I think I broke it. So format-wise, no presenter. The text is giving you what's there. The idea behind this was you going through your Twitter timeline on your way to work on the subway. In the South African context, on Rea Vaya, for example, or in a taxi, you're going through your Twitter stream coming to work in the morning. You can read the headlines, or you have it in your earphones and you're looking at it. One producer who knows Adobe Premiere pretty decently can cut together a bunch of videos and put in the graphics for them. Pretty straightforward. I don't want to take up too much of your lunch, so you guys can go to the AJ Plus website and see all of the different content formats, right? What I'll leave you with is that there's a whole bunch of different ones. You can do a 10-second, a 30-second, a 1 minute, a 1.5 minute, you can do a 3 minute. But for that, you'll have to sit on YouTube for maybe 2 days looking at Adobe Premiere and how to use Adobe Premiere. And by the end of that, you should be able to do your own videos. Yes?
The Mojo guy. That you support.
So, I haven't come across it, really, as yet. We're working on something with Wits. But in terms of its suitability for South Africa, definitely very easily replicable for South Africa. Okay, so that's that for now. I'll see you guys in the afternoon again.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, Mohammed's going to speak to you about something quickly. Since he's here.
Don't want me to leave, man. How many minutes do I have?
She's not here yet, so we've got some time.
Okay, so ASRI alumni, the intent is that, Sumaya, have you spoken about term 2 and term 3, like the externship?
No, so they don't know what externships they know they're doing. We're having meetings about that now, but they don't know what projects they're
And
doing.
then post-externship is...
Post-extensions, we haven't had any discussion. So that's what he's speaking about.
All right, so the intent with ASRI Future Leaders is that we don't sort of end our relationship at the end of your practicals or the end of the externships, right? What we really want is that ASRI acts almost like as a combination of a support system, a mentorship system, a recruitment agency. So a resource that's there for you to leverage to progress in your own careers and in your own sort of activism, if that's the route you take, or social entrepreneurship and so on, if that's what you choose. So the intent is that as long as we still around and we have the resources, which we definitely going to try to get, we then have an alumni program where, you know, we can be the first point of call for you if you're having any issues or if you're looking to build your careers and so on. The idea would be that there'd also be, you know, events through the year that as alumni you could participate in. Obviously some of you would be around the country, which would make it a bit more difficult to participate in all of them, right? We do have an annual conference that we have annually, so ideally we all get together at the annual conference every year as well to meet up. So the message I'm trying to get across is we don't want the relationship to end at the end of the program. We want it to be a lifelong relationship with you beyond the ASRI Future Leaders, right? So, you know, social support, career advisory, like all of those things, you know, we'll hope to be here to be able to do it for you. Any questions and thoughts? Okay, everyone's crying.
Guys, you become millionaires, you want money, right?
Yeah, okay. Debit order conditionality.